This is Winspace's new $1,900 SLC 3.0 frame. And today we're taking it to a carbon expert to see whether it's still good value for money. Welcome back to The What Life. Let's roll.
If you were to give the Specialized 10 out of 10, let's assume that. I've no idea if it is. It might not be. If you were to say it was 10 out of 10, I'd hope you could get a good 8.5 to 9 out of 10 out of this.
Yeah.
Possibly a 10 out of 10.
So you might have seen this frame because David Arthur recently built it up and weighed it in at 6.66 kg with an Ultegra group set, which is mind-blowing. So I have the chance to take this to my local bike shop to go and see a carbon expert who's going to give me a full breakdown on the quality of this frame and whether it is still worth the $1,900 price tag. Firstly though guys, we are going to weigh the frame. I saw Grant from GC Performance weigh it and he took a few things off. I think he took the braze-on off, but he left the bolts on and he left the hanger on. I know Patrick weighed it without the braze-on and without the bolts. I'm going to weigh it just the frame. So we're going to remove the braze-on and we're going to remove the bolts and then we're going to take off the derailleur hanger. Let's see what that comes in at. So let's weigh this bad boy. When I first weighed it, I whacked it on with all the bolts on and the rear derailleur hanger, and it came in at 801 grams. Let me take it all off, strip it down, and here we go. As we weigh it now with literally just the frame, it comes out at 760 grams. Whew, that is a good weight for a light bike. We're just going to weigh the nuts and bolts now just to see whether it all adds up, and that comes in at 41 grams. So there we go. The math is mathing. So my plan is to build this bike up to be competitive with my friend's Specialized SL8 Pro, which has a frame weight of 780 grams. So you can kind of see that we are relatively in the ballpark of being semi-competitive. I'm going to go a little bit different with my build, and some of the components I put on it are going to be a little bit better than the stock SL8 Pro, and some might be a little bit worse or a little bit more entry level. So it's going to be a combination, and we're going to see whether we can, in the wash, come out with a bike that is competitive with Ryan's SL8 Pro. But before we do that, guys, we're going to take this frame to go and see Cris at Flat Harry's. Cris is an incredibly knowledgeable guy. What he doesn't know about carbon is not worth knowing. He's going to give me the rundown on how it's built. We're going to look at everything. And this, guys, is a brilliant conversation. We break down the bottom bracket. We break down the way that they build all the mounts for things like the rear calipers and all the stuff that is on this bike. And we basically take a look and see whether we still think it's worth that $1,900 price tag. So stick around because we go into a lot of detail. Right guys, we're down at Flat Harry's. This is Cris. You own Flat Harry's, don't you?
I do.
He's going to be my bike, well, I mean, he's not going to be my biker. He is the carbon bike expert. I'm going to get you to have a look at this.
Yep.
First impressions, and then we're going to fire some questions at you. So here we go. This is what is being called the Winspace SLC, which stands for Super Light Climber. It's a size large, which translates to about 56. There we go. Cool. So this is it.
So how long have you had this?
This actually hasn't been released yet. You can't buy it.
Yep.
It comes out in about 3 weeks. I've had it about 4 or 5 days.
Okay. And who are Winspace?
So Winspace is a Chinese bike frame and wheel manufacturer. So they make Lun wheels. They also make obviously bike frames.
Right.
So what we're looking for? So you pick up a frame.
So what I'm doing here is I've literally just got my little endoscope, which enables me to have a look inside of the frame and to see kind of how clean it is, basically. You can see the weave of the actual carbon fibre itself. But what you're really looking for when you're looking at a good quality frame is where are the joints? Because they don't make a frame in one piece. They make the frame typically in 3 pieces. Some
do now.
Yep. Very, very, very rarely. And generally you can only make a frame in one piece if it's a kind of injection moulding type process. So what I'm looking for here is, where are the joints? How clean it is inside? And can I see any bits left over from the manufacturing process? So typically you're going to have either some sort of foam material, hard foam material that they would have used as the former for the inside of the frame, which during manufacturing they will then literally bake out. So in other words, once it gets to a certain heat, that foam will just evaporate. But in the meantime, up until that point, that foam holds the inside and enables them to pressurize from the outside and squeeze all the excess resin out of the carbon fibre manufacturing process. And this looks neat, actually. I mean, it's kind of, you can see just inside the bottom bracket that there are kind of a few layers. It's not the smoothest, but it's certainly by no means a problem. I quite like what I see, to be perfectly honest.
So with a BB86,
Yep.
Is there any difference? Like, are you looking for anything different to if it's like a BSA or a T47?
Yeah, absolutely. So bottom bracket standards have moved on, and manufacturers have played with various different means by making a bottom bracket. And the most important thing that you can do is just guarantee that the shell on one side of the frame is parallel to and aligned to the shell on the other side. And it's very easy to make a frame where those two things are not aligned. And if they are in any way misaligned, you've got a nasty bottom bracket. Now, with this system, there is no joint between one side and the other. So they've made it the lightweight approach, which an awful lot of manufacturers are doing now. And to guarantee that these two things are aligned, they're going to have basically A, manufactured it with that in mind, and then B, literally machined from one side of this frame right the way through the other side to guarantee that those are all aligned. Now, there's not a great deal you can do right here without some fancy tools to verify the alignment on this. But what you can do is when you insert bottom brackets, a good mechanic will know how well that is aligned, because literally as you if you've inserted both bearings in both sides, typically there's nothing else that will align those bearings together other than the frame itself. And as you insert your crank arm in, and essentially the axle goes through the two bearings, if they're perfectly aligned, it'll be a nice easy process. If they're not perfectly aligned,
So if you've got to like jam it through a
if
bit.
you've got to jam it through, it's not going to feel great. And then when you start spinning it, when it's all assembled, it's not just going to spin and spin and spin. And it should spin and spin and spin. BB86 is a good bottom bracket. I have it on pretty much all my frames that I ride. If they're not BSA, then they're BB86. And it's probably the least offensive of the bottom brackets that are out there. It's simple. Yes, it does have a downside, which is it's got relatively small bearings, so the bearings themselves take a larger load. But there are some decent bottom brackets out there for BB86. Important thing with the headset is to understand, have they machined this or have they just literally just pressed it in? There is a bit of there's an interesting thing here. Essentially they've inserted a headset race holder into the frame. So this part, the inner part here, was pre-formed. And what they've done is, as part of manufacturing this, they've built the rest of this frame around that pre-formed headset. And therefore you can see there's a very slight lip between the two. It wasn't created as a single unit.
So afterwards they'd have to like QC that and sand it down.
So they should machine that. And so essentially what they should have is a unit that has a perfectly square base, and then a machine that comes in from the top that's all connected to that base that literally will just guarantee that this is square either side. Thankfully, with headset bearings, modern headset bearings, there is a little bit of tolerance. So you don't have to be the most perfect of manufacturer to get a decent headset that isn't going to cause you a problem. Especially with the integrated headset, which is what this one is, where you literally put a headset bearing unit or an industrial unit into here, and you don't see any of the bearing at all. They've had to do some machining on this side, on the top end, which is good. It's kind of what you would expect.
What about the quality?
There is a little bit of, it's interesting that. I don't know if you can see that, but it's not perfectly kind of square all the way around. There's a bit of an indentation. Where basically, the machiner has kind of probably taken a little bit too much material out there. That's not going to cause a problem.
Yeah, is it better to take a little bit too much out than to leave not enough? Because then if you leave not enough, you get like a knob, and then
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's. I mean, if you create any rises in a surface like this, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
If you've got a tiny little pit in a surface like this, it's much less of a problem.
Especially for a headset. If we're
absolutely.
talking about bottom brackets, it's different gravy. Headsets,
To a degree. Yeah. I mean, headsets is kind of
a little bit of leeway because
Absolutely.
you just
absolutely.
as long as it's,
there are good tolerances in headsets that you can eliminate things like that with. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's a pretty standard looking, good quality frame, that, in terms of it's not exceptional, but it's certainly by no means a poor assembly. I mean, it's a good quality assembly.
Is it naughty that they've stated it as a 700 gram frame for a size medium?
Yep.
This is a size large, and I had to take everything off, and I got it down to 760 grams.
Yeah.
Is that a little bit naughty?
It's pretty standard. So most manufacturers will give you a weight for a frame, and only recently have they started talking about the fact that this is weighed either with or without all those components. Actually, most manufacturers will weigh your frame without paint on it. This one's got some paint on. It's not naked carbon fibre all the way through, but most of it is pretty raw and just with a little bit of lacquer. So my suspicion will be that, yeah, they've just they've pushed the envelope in terms of the acceptance by which you weigh something. It'd be interesting to see what components they actually put onto here. So actually the dropout for the rear derailleur, that's important, or the hanger for the rear derailleur is important to look at. The components that they supply for seat post, clamp and stuff like that, that often has a good reflection on the manufacturer in terms of how seriously they've taken those parts versus are they throwaway parts. Okay, so I'll have a look at those in a moment. Other than that, yeah, I mean, if we look straight down the seat tube, I mean, I can measure it. Always the simplest way of doing it is actually to get a reference seat post that I know is reliable.
If you get a new frame, is it worth putting like fingers down seat post just to like feel if there's any lumps or bumps? Because obviously, if you're putting a seat post down it and there's lumps,
if you're having to do that, then that indicates that actually they haven't finished off the frame.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't expect there to be anything.
That's what I mean.
Exactly. If you see any extra bits and pieces, let's put it this way: on a seat post or a seat tube, somebody should have machine checked that. Okay. So that should have been machined all the way through to verify that it's clear and it's smooth, such that you can put a 400 millimeter long seat post in there. So yes, you can't get it beyond this particular point, but wherever it should be able to go in, that should be super smooth. That's a given. If you're finding a frame that you can't do that on, personally, that's a big reflection on the fact it's not a finished product. But what I'm looking at in there is it's all very, very clear.
So as a lightweight frame, does having a kind of T-shaped seat stay, does that add more strength?
So this little piece here, so this shot-in seat stay, as we refer to it, is actually more of is as much a trend as it is an aerodynamic piece. So manufacturers have gone to the point of changing the location of where the seat stays join. They used to all join at the top near the top tube, or the intersection of the top tube and the seat tube. They've dropped that for a number of different reasons. One is it looks good. It looks pretty smooth. Second one is aerodynamically, they've taken away a part of the frame that was creating air disturbance. Secondly, because we no longer have a brake here, we can change the way that the tubes work. We used to have a rim brake, so because they don't have the rim brake anymore, they haven't got that restraint, so they can make it look smoother and neater at the same time. And then lastly, more importantly for most people actually, is the fact that by moving this seat stay down to this point here, you can create much more flex in the seat post. And the flex in the seat post, compliance, it's comfort.
They've gone down the new trend of closing the axle joints on
Yeah.
the non-drive side,
Yeah.
and that's on the front fork as well.
Yeah.
Can you see any problems down the road with that, or
I
like?
can, yeah. So if we
That wasn't the answer I was looking for.
unfortunately not. No, I know. So if you take a close look at this part down here, you've actually got an aluminium component that's been bonded into the carbon fibre frame. Now that's kind of a problem waiting to happen. So the issue you've got here is you've got non-anodized aluminium, which is creating your thread for both, for the bolt to go into. Now you're going to be putting a bolt in that's going to be made out of a different grade of aluminium than that thread is. Now that's always good. You want the two materials not to be identical, but it also means that one of them is going to be weaker than the other. One of them is going to be a wear part, therefore, and I would suspect that this part here in the frame is going to wear more than the bolt that you're going to be threading in and out, because the bolt you're threading in and out is going to be anodized and therefore harder. This is non-anodized and is naked aluminium and therefore softer.
But that's for the through axle, right? Like
It is for the through axle. So the through axle joins into that thread.
Yeah.
And the issue we often get, especially in the UK, is where people haven't used copious amounts of anti-seize paste. And as a result, we get a binding between the thread in the frame and the thread on the axle.
So it's like when people try and take their pedals off and they're like, it's stuck because they haven't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now
I don't ride in the rain, Chris, so don't have to worry about that.
And in the UK, obviously, we have an awful lot of salt.
Yeah.
Now, nowadays, actually, we're getting more and more problems with people riding indoors and the salt from their sweat causing lots of corrosion. I could have shown you some amazing handlebars from Canyon just
like
the other day
disintegrated.
that were literally just fur. And it was corrosion underneath the tape that just got eaten into the handlebars. It's the sort of thing that will happen down here. You have to be really careful with that. It's not a problem so long as you understand the
just grease
the
your
weakness.
axles.
Grease your axles, keep them greased, re-grease them every year.
Yeah.
Okay? But it's more about actually making sure that this whole area in here has got a decent anti-seize paste applied into it generously, and that you then keep it clean, because you don't want dirt getting in there and filling up that space and stopping the axle going in properly. If you look at BMC, the way that they've gone around doing this sort of thing is actually it's a modular unit that can be removed.
Okay.
And that's really what you want in this one, because that is a potential weak spot. And for an awful lot of caring owners, that's not going to be a problem at all. It's those people who don't look after their bikes.
I'm a caring owner.
There you go. You'll be fine.
So my buddy's got an Tarmac SL8 Pro,
Yep.
which is the 10R carbon fiber layup. This is I think it's a T1000 carbon layup for this. I just know that the numbers correlate to the quality.
They're using Toray carbon fibre.
Toray carbon fiber,
Yep.
T1000. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
In places, I think in other places they use.
Yeah, so
in the
typically
less
they will
stressed-
use
yeah.
different types of carbon fibre in different layups, in different sections. Some to be super stiff, and others to be more compliant.
This weighs 760 grams. He's got the Specialized SLA Pro,
Yep.
which is obviously a more expensive frame bike. Well, frame, even if you buy it as a frame.
Yeah.
Do I have half a chance of building something that's, now that you've seen it? I'm not trying to build something on his level, but I'm trying to get close.
Well, I would suspect this is going to be close. So if you were to say if you were to give the Specialized 10 out of 10, let's assume that. I've no idea if it is. It might not be. If you were to say it was 10 out of 10, I'd hope you could get a good 8.5 to 9 out of 10 out of this.
Yeah.
Possibly a 10 out of 10. It's very much going to come down to a few other things we haven't really looked at. One is alignment. So the alignment of the frame front to rear, that will give a large influence over the feel of the frame. Okay. If in any way this bike is out of alignment, and modern frames, it really shouldn't be. They shouldn't have passed QC if it's out of alignment. So I'm going to assume it's aligned, but you're going to really know it when you're actually out on the road, because an unaligned frame will steer more easily to one side than the other side on a level road.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Let's have a quick look at the fork if we can.
Yeah, grab it out of the box. So the other thing that's quite handy about this is it comes with two seat posts, two seat post clamps.
Yep.
One for a carbon rail, one for a 7x7 rail.
Yep.
It doesn't come with the bars. That's something that they've kindly provided separately.
Okay.
Obviously, the seat post comes with it and front fork.
Yeah. So one little thing you might want to have a quick look at is this. It's just a little indication to show the fact that actually if you look at the seat post, it's a round seat post. It should be something like 27.2 millimetres, which is pretty standard size. I'll measure it in a bit. But it's oval on the inside. Okay. I don't know if you can see. So the wall is thinner that side to side than it is at the front
Yeah.
and the back.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah.
So if you see that, the point is they've taken a bit of care over trying to design that carbon fibre seat post.
So they've reinforced the front and the back. Is that what you're saying?
So it is stronger front to back. They've taken away excess material where it doesn't need to be on the sides, and it also should mean that seat post has a bit of flex in it. Okay, if they made it out of super thick carbon fibre, so if it was the same thickness all the way around, it would be a pretty dead feeling seat post, and as a result, it wouldn't have much compliance. Yeah, you've got a few things which you just need to keep an eye on the seat post. So again, you've got a naked aluminium componentry, and all you need to do with that is just make sure that it's got some decent protective layer on it, either an anti-seize paste or just a lubricant that will stop any salt ingress causing any seizing. If I'm talking about, if I was to have to buy that seat post aftermarket, I'd expect you to have to spend about 150 quid on that seat post.
To me, that feels quite
good.
I think we've got half a chance of getting Ryan on the SL8 here.
Yeah, so the fork is interesting. I always like to pick up a fork and feel.
Shall I give you the key points about the fork?
Go on.
So one of the things that they have designed specifically is they side mount the cable rather than the front to stop cables twisting.
Okay.
So that was kind of like one of the I don't want to say proprietary. It's one of the things that they've designed into the
So
fork.
the hose comes in inside that fork and then straight up and into there.
Correct. So
and is that have you poked anything down through there?
There's been no poking, Chris.
Okay. So it's always interesting to me to understand how well they thought about the poor engineer or poor mechanic or owner who's got to get that hose through that fork. Yeah. Some manufacturers will have an entrance hole here, they'll have an exit hole here, and there'll be nothing to join those two things in between.
Yep.
And you have to poke around, you have to use some little puller.
I've had to done that, yeah.
Yeah. And if there's a tube inside here, it saves so much faffing around.
I use rubber bands.
Okay, you can.
It's a bit of a faff.
Okay, yeah. So we use wires with little threads on the end and magnets to basically get all the way through. So it'd be interesting to know whether that was a tube all the way through. If it was a tube, I'd give it a 10 out of 10. If it's not a tube, it's a bit of a cop-out, to be perfectly honest. It's so easy to do. The other thing is, so you've got relatively small width on the, width on the fork. So it's quite a slender fork. Now, depending on how they've laid this up, better quality forks will have different layup on the front and the rear of the fork, so that they can create some compliance without making a noodly, super soft fork. So in other words, what they would normally do is they'd have a stiffer front end to the fork and a slightly softer back end to the fork. That enables it to flex forwards and back, but under braking, it shouldn't feel like it's suddenly the wheel is digging in behind the bottom bracket.
Is this common to have like the crown raise now built into forks?
It is. It's pretty standard. I mean, the other thing that's always interesting for me with forks is to try and gauge how many parts they've made this from. So some manufacturers will go to the expense of making the fork as a single unit. Okay, it's possible, very possible, to make the fork as a single unit. Other manufacturers will manufacture the fork blade. They will separately manufacture the fork crown, so the part that comes across here, and the part that basically is the circle that the fork steerer bonds into. So many poorer quality forks, they will have a solid aluminium fork crown. They'll have either aluminium or a cheap carbon fibre shaft as the steerer that will be bonded in to the top of the crown here, and then you'll have these fork blades bonded into that fork crown. And many times we see corrosion all around this top end here because it's made from aluminium. Now clearly here I can see it's not made from aluminium. It looks like it's naked carbon fibre all the way through. It doesn't feel the lightest fork at all. It'd be interesting to know exactly how much that weighs. But there are many forks out there that are surprisingly heavy, but when you're riding them, feel fantastic. Now, weight in a fork typically indicates stiffness and indicates that this fork should give you good directional control. You don't want a fork that's super lightweight and actually every time you steer, so the front wheel isn't immediately responding, and every time you go over a bump in a corner at speed, the fork starts kind of flexing underneath you. That really freaks everyone out.
Like lateral stiff, like
Exactly,
you know,
the
that
lateral stiffness and the ability to just absorb a shock from below without kind of getting into a springing situation. If your fork is very springy, then you'll be bouncing down the road and you hit a bump in a corner and the whole bike kind of jerks around. Whereas a stiffer fork needs to have a little bit of compliance. It should just absorb that bump and therefore you just carry on. But no, that all looks pretty smooth. It's kind of, you can see some folds in the top end of that fork crown, but no, I can't see any major issues there at all. I'd expect that fork crown to have been pre-manufactured. There's probably going to be a joint somewhere down this fork steerer.
This is retailing at $1,900, $1,900.
Yeah. So what's that in pounds? I'm not sure what the conversion rate is at the moment. 1700?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably quite fair. So there are things on here that are on a frame set over £2,000. So what's that, $2,300-ish? Yeah. I wouldn't expect to see. So things like these aluminium thread points. So the fact that all the threads are aluminium as against machine carbon fibre kind of indicates just it's not top end. When you start looking at top end materials, you wouldn't expect to see aluminium here and here.
What would you get?
It would be carbon. It
I
would
see.
be proper carbon fibre that's been machined, and there would either be a carbon thread, or they would have used a steel helicoil into a carbon thread, which is.
But you can. But I guess I imagine that if you try and do that, you don't. It doesn't just go up from 1,700. That then kicks you. Doesn't to just over 2,000. That probably kicks you straight up, doesn't it? Like
Yeah, realistically, the frames I'm talking about are going to be around 2.5 to 2.8 and above.
Pounds, yeah.
That's pounds. And yeah, I mean, when I look at the top end stuff that we deal with, actually talking more like $4,000 for that sort of
it's
thing.
almost like twice. So
It is.
kind of getting into that twice
In
as
terms
much
of
bracket,
value for
yeah.
money, just
Yeah.
looking at this, it's good. I mean, it'd be really interesting to see what it rides like. But the finish on it, both internally and externally, that all feels good. Looks good. We could get the old lines out and start double checking alignments, but I'm kind of going to say it's a pretty pointless thing because it's not like something you can reset. If it was a steel or aluminium frame, you could reset it if it wasn't in alignment. With carbon fibre, it is what it is.
You're basically just finding out that it's not aligned and you've got to ride it not aligned.
Indeed. It's good to see what components they provide. It kind of gives you a good feel for what they're aiming for. So this is your steerer bung, and that's quite a nice little bit of kit actually. I like that. That's from Token as well. Okay. So Token being a good quality manufacturer.
And the headset's FSA.
Okay.
Not that I think it's like the spacers,
standard.
the spacers, and
Yeah. So this is pretty standard stuff. I see this on these components on an awful lot of frames from the likes of Ridley and BMC. So split components that enable you to change your spacers without having to take your stem off in order to increase or decrease the number of spacers in there.
which is good for the one piece world.
So there's your other seat post clamp. Very good. So that's
So it comes with two. So
Yeah.
I mean, which I think is quite good, right?
It
like
is,
you
it's
don't want to
very
like
good. No, I
have to
mean,
like, hey, I'm running a carbon seat post. I need to.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that's pretty mandatory, to be perfectly honest.
Is
It's
it, to most bikes?
Yeah, it is. Most of them do. And if they don't, then what they will have done is use a standard manufacturer who you can get straight off.
Like an
the internet
aftermarket one.
Exactly, an
Yeah.
aftermarket one, which, Ritchie Components make an awful lot of seat post clamps for an awful lot of manufacturers, for instance. Yeah, in terms of FSA headsets, pretty standard in the industry. You can't really go wrong with them. Some of their standard sizes, and they haven't got any odd sizing on there. One little trick, you've got two very different bearings here actually. This bearing, which looks like the top bearing, has been sealed both sides, upper and lower, and then this bearing, which most definitely would be the lower bearing, has only got a single seal on it. There's a little gap here. Anyone who's building their own frame, best thing you can do to prolong the life of that bottom bearing, because it's not a stainless steel one by the looks of it, is just get a good load of really thick lubricant of some sort. So basically, we would use a really thick grease in this instance, or assembly paste, and we'd basically coat the inside of that lip, and that would just guarantee you're not going to get water ingress. Otherwise, you'd be replacing that within 6 months. And on an integrated system, it's a real pain in the backside, because if you've got to replace that bottom bearing,
You've got to take everything off.
you've got to take everything off. You've got to bleed your brakes.
Yep.
It's expensive to do so.
Chris, I can't say this enough, mate. I don't ride in the rain. I really don't.
Everything I see here, it's all good stuff. It's not exceptional stuff.
But representative of what they're asking you
It
to
is
pay.
in terms of the price. I suspect that's not a stainless steel bolt, for instance, and after a few years, you might want to replace that with stainless steel bolt just to stop it from corroding. There are things that you could, if you're building it yourself, Absolutely.
there are things that you can like pick up and
Absolutely.
swap in and swap out and change.
The important thing to do is wherever you've got naked aluminium like you've got here, just make sure you protect that and keep protecting it. There are products from various manufacturers who basically just provide you with the ability to protect from sweat in particular.
So if I bring it back in once it's built, will you take a quick look at it? And
Absolutely, I'd be really interested actually, and it's my size, so I might even take it for a ride and give you a verdict based on feel. I mean, I think it's an interesting machine, that.
Right guys, I think Chris did an excellent job at showing us just how good quality this frame is. And if I'm honest with you, I am really, really looking forward to building it up, and I think we're going to be competitive with Ryan's SL8 Tarmac Pro, which is good news. Next video, I'm going to take you through all the different components, the group set, the cassette, the bottom bracket, everything that I'm going to be putting on this bike, and we're going to weigh it. And then eventually we'll get to the point when we've built ourselves a bike and see how it performs with a comparative test to my buddy's SL8 Pro. Guys, see you on another one soon. Thanks for sticking around. Please do like and subscribe if you are interested in the channel. See you next time.
Little bonus piece for you, some bar chat. So they make these bars. They're called the 0SL bars. I think it's written on the side, maybe 105 by 38s. Again,
Yeah, so 115 mil long stem, 75 reach. So that's the reach that far forwards, and then is it 125 drop? Yeah, it's pretty standard. Pretty standard. What I'm always interested in with bars is the ergonomics. How well have they really designed that? It's interesting actually. It feels pretty natural. Got a very slight flare out the back on the bottom of the bar there. It does look to me that they've angled the whole of this bend in. So it'll be interesting to know when you build that up where the levers sit naturally. Most people do like to have their levers kind of angled in.
that's a
maybe
modern
5
day thing,
degrees.
isn't it?
Absolutely,
It's like a modern
absolutely.
day. Every bar now is.
It is.
And they've got this little proprietary system for just a.
Yep.
It comes with a Garmin
Yep.
computer mount
Yep.
GoPro undermount.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think this retails about. Don't quote me on this. I'll put the number on the bottom of the screen. About $200 and something.
Right. Yeah, bars are actually really hard to manufacture well. We recently had to send back some Shimano or Pro bars, Pro Evos, because actually you couldn't get the cable or the hose through the inside because it was so badly manufactured inside that there wasn't free space for it all. So it'll be interesting to see how you get on.
And I've got these on my current bike.
Cool.
And I really
You managed to get the hoses through easy.
Yeah, and I built it all myself. No,
Cool.
absolutely no problem.
Cool. Again, it's kind of thing that we do with our little endoscope there. Just to have a look
These can
inside.
probably come out because I'm not running mechanical, am I? So
No, interesting. Yeah, it's a pretty standard bar, to be perfectly honest. It's kind of, we see loads and loads like this. It's always a toss-up between the beauty of an integrated system versus the fact that you now got a set stem length and you can't change that. For an awful lot of owners of bikes, until you're really mature and understanding, is it really a 110 that you want, or is it a 120, or is it even 130 mil stem that you want, and exactly what angle do your bars best sit at for you to ride. I'm always a bit kind of sceptical around integrated handlebars and stem, just because I'm a bike fitter and I want the ergonomics to be right more than the look.
Well, I'm a trendsetter, Chris,
Exactly.
so I need the stylish.
style. Absolutely.
And
And
style
that is
over function.
It is a stylish bar, it's got to be said. But it feels, I mean, just in the hand there,
Yeah.
I can imagine where the brake's going to go. That feels good.
Yeah.
It's a nice platform for your hands to rest on.